Hi, I'm Tola,
And I'm Yinka,
and together we run a consulting company called TA Consulting.
where we create strategic brands for ambitious companies.
All right, so Yinka, what exactly is a brand story, and is it something I need for my business?
So, a brand story is a narrative that businesses use to make themselves relatable to customers. I think the first point I would like to make is that stories are important because stories are the way human beings use to make sense of everything that goes on around us. There's a reason why watching movies, watching TV shows, reading novels, comic books, why those are like the most important forms of entertainment right now. Because we as human beings have been hardwired to connect with stories. And there have been like these scientific experiments that have been done where the brain does not know the difference between fiction and fact. And that is why you may be watching a movie or you may be watching Titanic when Rose had to let go of Jack from the door and you were crying and weeping. Like Jack was not a real person. Rose was not a real person. They were characters in the show, but people cried and people related with that because human beings are hardwired to connect with stories. This is the way we make sense of the world through a narrative. And so one of the problems that I think businesses make is that they do not use this tool, this narrative tool, like telling stories about their business and about their brand when they're trying to communicate with their customers. And so what happens is that they end up being very, very rational, very logical in the way they communicate to their customers. When those customers are emotional people first,
Highly emotional.
highly emotional people. And most of the buying decisions that customers take are from emotional places. I think one example I like to give is adverts. There is no advert that is just a, reeling off of the facts of a product. Red Bull is a juice, gives you energy, you can use it when you want to read. No, there's always some kind of story. There's either a man flying, he drinks it and he flies, and it tells a story. It tells a story about that brand, and you're like, oh wow, it gives you wings and makes you fly. Oh, like I want to fly.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I know what you just said now about adverts using story to sell a product. Kind of reminds me of this product links. And I remember being a teenager, and I traveled to the UK then for holiday, and I saw this advert for the first time. And I know links then used to hinge their adverts on the product making you more attractive as a guy to the opposite sex. And then, when I watched it, the story was so compelling. It was a short story of if you're a guy, a teenage guy, use it, girls will flock. And whenever I bought links then because I thought it made me actually more attractive too. So I could relate to that. So the story made all the sense to me then. And I can still remember it now, 10 years, 15 years later. So I totally agree with that.
And I think what makes stories so powerful is that they appeal to our emotions. Good stories appeal to our emotions. When they tell you the story of a lion whose father was a king, and then eventually the king's brother, connived, and then the king died, and we all watched The Lion King when Mufasa fell down and died, we connected with that because we understood the meaning of loss. So it wasn't particularly about the lion, but whenever we thought about that story, we always found a way to relate it to ourselves. And so in that way, we're able to empathize with Simba's loss when Mufasa died. And that's why stories are important, because stories is a gateway to the emotion. And once you are able to connect with the emotion, then that is a much deeper connection than just a basic one.
how can a business tell a story? Because some people say, look, I'm not a storyteller. I don't know. I'm not good at storytelling. How can a business use the tool of storytelling?
Human beings have been telling stories for the longest time. And there are some really basic, patterns in storytelling. So one of the basic patterns in storytelling is that there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. Another basic pattern is that there is a character, there is the setting, the place where it's happening, and then there's a plot, kind of like a step by step of what's going on. So that's another pattern. And then the third pattern is usually, and this is the most basic form of story that exists, that there is a character and that character's life is going normal, but usually something happens and then that character's life is now disrupted. They are trying to achieve something, but they are unable to achieve it. And so usually what happens is that they meet up with some kind of guide who helps them achieve the thing. The amazing thing about that story structure is that usually at the beginning of the story and at the end, the character has been transformed. So for instance, in Lion King, in the beginning, it was Simba, and all Simba wanted to do was to be in charge, to be in control. That was all he wanted. And then what was stopping him from that was his wicked uncle, who was stopping him from being the king and drove him out of the Pride Lions. And then he in this moment when he's downcast, he discovered a guide, and that was Timon and Pumbaa, and they helped him grow up and to adapt and to change and to transform. And also he met Kiara, who was, also a kind of guide that helped him realize who he was. And then at the end, he was able to go back and overcome the obstacle that was stopping him and become the king, become the person in charge. So at the beginning, he was a little cub, and at the end, he was this mighty lion, right? And so businesses need to understand that in the story that they are telling, the customer is the hero. And every business is solving a problem. And so that problem is what's stopping the customer from being who they want to be or doing what they want to do. And so you, as a business, you are the guide that helps your customer to overcome that obstacle and become the kind of person that they want to be. We've spoken about Red Bull. Now, Red Bull's storytelling is that you are someone that wants to get things done. You want to go about your day. You want to be productive. But the obstacle you have to face is tiredness. And so Red Bull, and as seen in their taglines, like gives you wings and makes you fly, it's like they come like, if you take this drink, you will be able to overcome tiredness.
So tiredness is now the antagonist
Exactly.
in the story.
Tiredness is the antagonist, the obstacle, the scar
Yeah.
in this case. And so when you take it, at the beginning, you were tired and you were unable to achieve a lot. But at the end, the customer sees themselves as, flying, being able to achieve so much more. Or in the case of Lynx, as attracting the girls. That is the end story. Now, if you are unable to paint a clear picture of the outcome that the customer is looking for, they will not connect to it. So if you are a logistic rider, you should not be selling the fact that you have logistics, like you can take the packages from one to the other. You should sell the idea that you enable people communicate quickly. Because what people want is not to send a file. What people want is for their message to be delivered. You have any other...
Yeah, so the story kind of puts the customer, it makes them feel like the service was custom made for them. So as opposed to a company saying, we deliver your package from here to there, there's a story told that the customer can put themselves in. So it's almost like saying, I'll give this example, maybe a logistics company that delivers cakes, and they tell a story of somebody a baker trying to deliver a cake to someone who's celebrating his or her birthday, but by the time the cake gets there, it's in ruins. And when someone watches that, you can kind of relate that, oh, this has happened to me before, and these guys can help me solve that problem. Just by watching that story, you can put yourself in that situation of, oh, I could be the person, or I have in the past been that person that received a damaged good or a smothered cake or stuff like that. So I think I get where you're coming from with that, telling a story and getting the customer to see the end point,
Yes.
of where they are going to be, as opposed to you selling a service of this is what we do.
And so what happens is, and I think this is the final point, but what happens is when a business is able to tell a good story, that the character, the customer is the focal point of it. He's the character, he's the hero of that story. What happens is that they create a bond between the customer and the business, between the customer and the brand. And so when that customer is faced with a choice, right? The customer, based on that relationship, essentially that you have created, then that customer is more likely to choose you. It's just like in primary school when you had to choose friends to play football or something. At least in my case, that was it. You always pick your friend first because there was a relationship, because you had things in common. And so that is how it plays out in the marketplace. So when customers need to choose, they would rather choose someone that they relate with. And so there are different ways, and that's one of the things that we do here at TA Consulting, where we help businesses forge stories that their customers can relate with, that their customers can see themselves in, and it compels them to be more loyal, compels them to choose that brand time and time again. If you like what you've heard, you can check us out at tolaalabiconsulting.com.